Remember when we were younger and all stories began with the words, "Once upon a time"? Well, this is where my story begins too. Once upon a time, I was in my driveway on a bright, sunny November day, washing my 2008 Bullitt Mustang. There are guys who like to relax by playing golf and others who like to just take a nap. But for me, washing my car relaxed me and allowed my mind to find answers to my problems. I lived on someone else's time and I knew it. The strange thing was that what I thought I knew and what was going to happen were two different things. The forecaster predicted that this late fall warm-up we've been experiencing could last another week or two. This gave me at least 7 to 14 extra days to drive the Bullitt. After that, however, I would have to put it away for the winter and drive my Jeep. I had all my favorite Turtle Wax ice products displayed on my cart and was just about to finish up the interior and then start working outside when a car was driving erratically down my street and came to an abrupt stop in front of my house. I recognized the driver, or at least the person behind the wheel, as my wife's mother, Judy. She got out of the car, leaving it diagonally in the middle of the street, and ran along my entrance. As she came closer, I noticed tears in her eyes, and she rushed towards me. She buried her face in my chest and began to cry bitterly. "Come on, Judy," I said softly. "Let's go into the house, and you can tell us all about it." I took her into the house and sat her at the kitchen table. "He's such an asshole," she sobbed. "Judy, would you like something to drink?" I asked. "Do you have tea?" she asked between sobs. I nodded and poured her a cup, starting to brew the tea. "Judy, give me the keys so I can get your car off the road before someone hits it," I said. She handed me the keys, and I moved her into the living room where she would be more comfortable. I screamed upstairs and called my wife Penny to come down. I walked out the back door and parked Judy's Accord in the driveway behind my Mustang, but not too close to it. I didn't want my car to get mad at me. When I returned to the kitchen, the tea was ready, so I took it and a tray of sugar and milk and a large piece of chocolate cake, which Judy herself had brought the day before, into the living room. I placed the tray in front of Judy. Looking at the two women sitting there, head to head, I was amazed. Every time I saw them together, it was shocking. They looked more like sisters than mother and daughter. Penny, at 25, and her mother, Judy, at 43, looked almost identical. Sure, if you looked closely, Judy had a few wrinkles on her face, and if you caught her between salon visits, you might notice a gray hair or two, but the resemblance was uncanny. Looking deeper, the picture was changing because Judy ran every day and her muscle tone was even better than her sedentary daughter's, and she was several pounds leaner. Both women were tall and as if willow-haired. I would say Judy had slightly larger breasts, but Penny's were firmer. In 9 cases out of 10, the competition would have to be declared a draw. "Thank you, Donnie," Judy sobbed. "Pen, you're so lucky to have him. You'll probably never have to find out that your husband is cheating on you again," she said. I was shocked. I couldn't believe that Ed, Pen's dad, was cheating on Judy. For her age, or any age, she was attractive. She was also the most caring person I knew. I would like my daughter to have the same character as her. I knew Penny loved me, but she was a bit spoiled. I think in the end I caused it myself. I started to walk away, but Judy grabbed my hand. "Donnie, you're part of the family too," she said, "and I want to talk to you." "Okay, Judy," I said. "Why?" she asked me. "Why is he doing this?" "What is he doing?" I asked. "What is it with you men that you just have to cheat?" she asked. I started to feel uncomfortable. "Mom, when I was in college, we learned that men are genetically predisposed to spreading their genes to as many willing, fertile females as possible. Maybe Dad has an excess of this predisposition. Maybe it's not his fault. Men are just born that way. And maybe some women too. Society even laughs and looks away when men do it. They say he is manly or a ladies' man, but when a woman does it, she is a slut in the eyes of society," Penny said. "I'm not talking about men in general," Judy said. "I'm talking about your father. who swore to be faithful to me and to love me, and he continues. Mom, you know Daddy loves you, Penny interrupted. He loves you more than anything in the world. But he just has this need to spread his genes. You can't argue with nature. All you can do is try to work with it. When he married me, he vowed to put my needs and our marriage before nature, Judy said. The doorbell interrupted the conversation, at least temporarily. I'll open it, I said, glad to be able to get away from a painful and emotionally charged situation. It's not that I don't care. I loved both of Penny's parents, but all I wanted was to wash my car. When I opened the door, I came face to face with Penny's father, Ed. He looked like a dog that had been kicked. Ed was about 5 feet 4 inches tall and stocky, with a balding crown and what appeared to be a single eyebrow that crossed his forehead. Why a guy who looked like that would even be with Judy, let alone marry her, was a topic best left to science fiction writers because it didn't make sense. But for that same guy, cheating on her made even less sense. Hi, Dawn, he said quietly. I saw Judy's car in the driveway. Is she here? They're in the living room, I said. I showed him the way and he walked slowly. I walked out the door he had just come through, shaking my head. I took the hose and started dousing the car to wash away any loose bits of dirt and debris from the finish before I started soaping it up and washing it. I was just getting into it and telling the car how good it would feel when it was clean and waxed again, when I heard laughter behind me. Just as I started to turn my head to see who it was, 2 slender arms wrapped around my waist. A head full of brown hair fell on my shoulder. Donnie, do you love me? She asked. Of course I do, Penny. You already know that, I said. Well, I'm having a family crisis here, darling, she said. I need help. I need you to fry the steaks and help me calm my mom down. They might actually get a divorce this time. Has he done this before? I asked. Several times, Penny said. They both love each other so much, but they keep doing it. I can see that Dad is really serious about stopping this time. He even suggested that they get help. All the previous times he talked about how he doesn't need a psychiatrist picking his brains, but he finally realized that he might not be able to quit on his own. And my mother knows that he loves her. All these other women meant nothing to him. It was just sex. But it seems she drew the line. Maybe she should have done more than that, I said. What do you mean? Penny asked. Listen, honey, they're both adults. They're older than us. They know they have to be responsible for their actions and the consequences of their choices. So maybe if your mom hadn't put up with this for so long, she wouldn't be going through this now. And maybe if she did that, your dad would realize that if he kept doing it, it would cost him in the end. I don't understand you, darling, Penny said. Okay, let me explain this more simply, I said. If I were your mom, the first time I caught him cheating, I would have divorced him. I heard what you tried to tell her about his nature and everything, but to me it's just nonsense. It's like you were justifying what he was doing, and he needs to understand that every time he does it, there's a chance he'll lose his wife and family. Penny looked at me as if she was shocked. Then she bit her lip, and it began to tremble. I knew it was going into a fight, flight, or cry response. I watched as she said nothing, and then the tears came. I hugged her and told her to calm down. I would do whatever she wanted. Donnie, this is easy for you. It's not your parents talking about breaking up. Your parents were perfect, so you never went through this. I don't want my parents to split up, and I don't want them to live the rest of their lives alone. When we have children, I want them to have 2 grandparents who love them, and I want us all to have one big happy family. I don't want to worry about a birthday party or a barbecue. And I can't invite one of my parents because the other one won't come if they're there, she cried. Okay, honey, I said. I will help. I'll cook the steaks and you send your father to talk to me while you talk to your mother. Maybe when the food is ready, you 2 can join us on the terrace and we can get them to talk. I disagreed philosophically with what I was doing, but I loved Penny the way flowers love rain. I could also understand her need to try to keep her parents together. Most of us don't want our family to fall apart. We expect our parents to be paragons of virtue. After all, it was from them that we received examples of good and evil. Even when they fail, we tend to look the other way just to get on with it. So I spent an unpleasant day chatting with my father-in-law. We moved on to a conversation about my Mustang, during which Penny's father lied to me. He told me he had a friend who had a bullet Mustang that they made in the 80s. He told me how much faster it was than the ones they make now, and how he had borrowed it a couple of times. I simply nodded my head and smiled. But I thought he was a lying sack because they didn't make bullets in the 80s and 90s. And when it comes to speed, the 2012 Mustang V6 has more horsepower than the V8s of the 80s and 90s, as well as a higher top speed, and they handle better and save fuel. Anyway, after that we talked about sports and how to cook the best steak on the grill. He was giving me all this fatherly advice and trying to make himself out to be an expert on how to be a man while I was supposed to be washing my damn car. So after I pointed the light at him, I dropped the other shoe. "So what's going on between you and Judy?" I asked. He looked like I had slapped him. Then he couldn't stand it anymore and almost cried. "I didn't want to hurt her," he shouted. "She shouldn't have found out." Well, this is original, I thought. Are there any traitors in the world whose spouses should have found out about this? And if he didn't want to hurt her, then why the hell did he do the thing that would hurt her the most? I had to try really hard not to attack him. I remained surprisingly calm and collected, even though I was seething inside. Judy looked so much like her daughter that I just imagined him doing something that would hurt Penny too. And I didn't allow anyone to harm my wife at all. What I really wanted was to get this scammer off my property. I think Judy should have divorced him. He was a serial cheater and will do it again. But I held my tongue and behaved while the old cheater talked about how all these women were constantly pursuing him, as if his fat, hairy, balding 5'4" ass was some kind of sex symbol. According to him, women of all ages constantly offered him sex. Judy would be better off without him. I thought about my father and Uncle Steve. They were both great guys. My mother died several years ago in a car accident. Dad died a year or so after Mom, so he was no longer with us. But any of those guys would give anything to have a woman like Judy in their lives, and they would be better for her than this idiot. But I smiled at him, thinking about it. An hour or so later, Judy and Penny joined us on the terrace. We ate, and the dinner was pleasant. Ed had a practiced image of an unhappy puppy. He spewed more nonsense than a herd of cows. "I think part of my problem is that in recent years I've drifted away from the church," he said. "I need a dose of a good book to get me back on track." I looked at him from the other end of the table, expecting to see him struck by lightning. When that didn't happen, I shouted, "Sorry." Then I ran into the house and went down to the basement. I closed all the doors behind me and buried my face in one of the pillows on the couch down there. Then I laughed until I cried. He was just trying to say whatever he thought would save him again. When I finished laughing, my tears were still flowing and my face was red. I returned and sat down at the table. Penny looked at me strangely. The expression on Ed's face was as clear as freshly fallen snow. It was as if he was waiting to be declared the first living saint. Judy looked at me, and I felt uncomfortable. The look on her face said it all. She was in great emotional pain. She was teetering on the brink of cutting this bastard out of her life forever, and was counting on her daughter and me to help her make the right decision. "So, Donnie, do you think counseling might be the answer?" she asked. I looked at Ed, who nodded his head at me very subtly. And I looked at Penny next to him, who was trying to save her parents' marriage. She nodded too, almost imperceptibly. Then I looked into Judy's eyes. There was no trace of deception in her eyes. And I did it. I did this for purely selfish reasons. I did it because I knew Penny would be mad at me. I lied. "Counseling is designed to help you sort out problems in your marriage," I said. "If you have a good therapist, they can sometimes help you see things about yourself and about the relationship that would otherwise go unnoticed. They help you see patterns of behavior that aren't obvious to the average person. It wasn't completely a lie. I heard this on a Science Channel therapy show, so in some situation somewhere it was probably at least partially true. Judy looked into my eyes and believed me. She nodded her head and said, "Okay, we'll try." She reached across the table and took Ed's hand, smiling at him. Penny beamed with happiness as she looked at me. I felt disgusted. I'm a predator. Sometimes I only eat meat at a meal and skip the vegetables so I can eat more steak or roast. But that day I almost threw up. I felt lousy for what I had just done. "Sorry to interrupt you, lovelies," I said, "but I need to show Ed one more thing about my car." While the ladies cleared the table and put the dishes in the dishwasher, I took Ed to the garage. "Hey, your car isn't in the garage," he said, smiling. "She's in the driveway." I grabbed him by the throat and pushed him against the garage wall so hard that the clock on the garage wall fell and broke on the concrete floor. "Listen carefully. This is the first and last time I'll lie to save your rotten cheating ass," I hissed. "If you cheat on her again, you'll have more problems than just a divorce. Got it?" He nodded his head vigorously. I hit him against the wall again for added effect. Then we returned to the house. "They didn't make them like that in the old days, did they, Ed?" I asked, returning to the kitchen. This time I smiled. Ed tried to fake a smile, but his head hurt and he was shocked. No one had ever talked to him like that. Penny came out of the pantry and noticed something I didn't see. "Dad, you have a bump on the back of your head," she said. "Where is she from? Are you okay?" "Ha ha," I laughed. While we were in the garage, a clock fell off the wall and hit Ed on the head. His head is as tough as a rock. He broke the damn clock. He's a tough old guy. Ed nodded his head mechanically. It was only a month and a half later, 3 days after Christmas, that I held her hand and hugged Judy as we walked into the morgue. We walked inside the unexpectedly cool room and encountered a man who looked as alive as the people he was caring for. "I'm sorry for your loss," he smiled. If his smile was meant to be friendly or comforting, he failed at both. His smile in such a situation looked simply creepy. He led us to a raised table. I noticed that by this point Judy and I were supporting Penny as she walked unsteadily. When the morgue worker removed the sheet from the body, he did it with such artistry that many illusionists would be jealous. I half expected him to jump down on one knee and shout, "Voila!" From the moment we looked at the lifeless body in front of us, our reactions varied. Penny sank to the floor and began to sob. Judy nodded her head and turned away. I went into shock. My mind was throwing out hundreds of absurd thoughts per second. When I looked at the body formerly known as Ed, I was first struck by how pure it was. It didn't look dirty, dark, and bloody like I expected. Then my brain kicked in and reminded me that the body had probably been cleared for an autopsy that would soon be performed. The bullet holes didn't look like they did in the movies. They looked more like ragged slits than neat circles. Obviously, this was done by a person who was a complete mess in his head. "Can you identify the deceased?" asked the morgue employee. Both Judy and Penny nodded their heads sadly. "Again, sorry for your loss. Have a nice day," he said, turning away. Judy and I took Penny by the arms and led her back outside the morgue. The detective who brought us here was in the waiting room. He put on his hat and came up to us. "So the deceased was your husband?" he asked Judy. She nodded her head and squeezed my hand for support. "When he didn't come home from work last night, I was worried. Ed does a lot of things, but he always calls to let him know what's going on," she said. "He sat us around his table and asked if we would like something to drink. I looked at the rancid-looking coffee maker and said, 'No, thanks.'" "What happened to him?" Penny asked. "I cannot disclose specific details of the ongoing investigation," he began. "But damn, it'll be in the papers by the time you get home. Your husband, your father, girlfriend, was found shot to death at the Sleazy Easy Motel on Sycamore Avenue. Also on scene was a woman. It took us most of the night to get her to calm down enough to talk about it and say something coherent. Apparently, she and your father went on a date at this motel and were discovered by her husband. He burst through the door and found them together. He had a pistol with 9mm bullets and a large magazine. He shot your father 8 times and kept the last bullet for himself. As soon as we walked away from the detective's office, Judy's strong facade disappeared, and she began sobbing on my shoulder. I took them both home and tried to make them comfortable. For the rest of the day, people who heard about Ed's death stopped by to offer their condolences. My neighbor, Tanya, came in with a tray of delicacies. She hugged me and asked how I was coping. Tanya is incredible. She has short blonde hair and is quite slim, but with curves. She's the type of woman who can sit and talk or get up and play football with the guys. But then 10 minutes later, she's dressed in a tight dress and heels and looks great. She is the type of woman who is not too feminine, but is still very feminine. If you saw her across a crowded room, you would thank God that you were married to her. I think they call her secretly sexy, and such women only improve with age. "How are you coping?" she asked. I shrugged. "It's okay, honey, we're friends," she said. "I often saw him when he came to visit you. He was there, talking to you while you were spoiling the queen of the area." Tanya, of course, was talking about my Mustang. She always told me that if her husband Rick spent as much time on her as I do on my car, she would be a happy girl. "Actually, Tanya," I began. Then I lowered my voice so no one could hear us. I couldn't stand the old man. He was a serial cheater. It was in his nature to cheat. "You can't argue with nature," she laughed. "And Judy is so sweet," I continued. "I don't know how she dealt with it for so long. Once she gets over his death, she'll be better off without him." "You're wrong," she laughed. "Women are not like that, especially her generation. He was her first lover, her first husband, her first everything. Why do you think she forgave him all the time? She loved him, fool. She couldn't imagine life with anyone else. She could be angry with him, scold him, and deny him sex for a while. But in the end, they got back together. They are like magnets. They just continue to be drawn to each other. Without him, she will be lost." Tanya was wrong about some things. Over time, Judy's anger at Ed continued. At first, she even refused to go to his funeral. I convinced her to go for Penny. Penny ended up getting angry at her mother and at me. I told her I didn't want to speak at her father's funeral. I think she thought I was just nervous about speaking in front of an audience. But really, I couldn't think of a single good thing to say about him. One of his best friends ended up doing it. His words were memorable. "We're all here to say goodbye to Ed Bauer." Well, Eddie was. He was Ed. You should have known him. Even his best friend, who had known him for 45 of the 50 years of his life, couldn't think of a single good thing about him. After the funeral, Judy found it difficult to cope with life. It has become more a part of us. There were things she just couldn't handle. If we were watching a TV show and a man cheated on his wife, Judy would get furious. Penny and I spent a lot of time talking about what we could do for her. Penny seemed to take her father's death easily. We just continued with our lives. After all, we didn't see him every day anyway. About 3 months after his death, we got together with a group of our friends and relatives. We thought we were cunning. We invited almost every eligible man in Judy's age group we could think of. At 43, Judy wasn't old, and she looked like she could be Penny's sister rather than her mother. The problem wasn't the men. They were all around her. The problem was Judy. She was sweet, she was kind, but she was one man's woman. She didn't know how to flirt or act socially. Hell, when she was 18 and her parents allowed her to start dating, Ed, who was 25 and had already been married twice, immediately charmed her, took her under his wing, and married her. Ed was the only man she had ever dated. Judy simply didn't know the rules of the game or the game itself. We didn't expect anything the first time. We thought we would have to do these little meetings regularly before we would be successful. The problem started after the party. As we were cleaning up, I noticed Penny's phone on the countertop. As I approached the countertop, it rang. The ringing meant that a message had arrived. I thought it was a message from her mom thanking us for inviting her to the party. I turned on the phone and was shocked to read the message. Meet me tomorrow at the same place at 12 in. I scrolled through previous posts and even found the location. Penny was texting some guy and making an appointment. I was shocked. For a long time, I just stood there, looking at her phone. It seemed to me that my world was collapsing. I had no idea this was even happening or possible. Penny and I had sex so often it seemed crazy. When did she have time to sleep with someone else? Our brain is a very tricky place, because at that moment, standing there, holding this little piece of plastic, glass, and electronics that I bought for her, I felt sick. I also felt very stupid because she gave me all the clues. When her father was caught, Penny spoke up in his defense every time. Most women wouldn't be so quick to defend a cheater, even if it was their own father. Penny came to his defense forcefully. I didn't even wonder if she might have a reason for this. When she defended him, she always confidently stated that her father loved her mother. It was simply in his nature to change. Perhaps it was a case of, like father, like daughter. After all, you can't argue with nature. I think I was expected to do what Judy did and just accept it. Judy really loved this idiot. She also had her own nature. She was loving and forgiving. Perhaps that's why she forgave him again and again until the end. Perhaps this was the true source of her anger. Maybe she wasn't actually angry that he was caught cheating again. Maybe it was that his death left her unable to forgive him again. Someone isn't doing their part to clean up, Penny said with a smile. But that's okay. I've done enough for both of us. How about we move to the bedroom? Honey, I really need to adjust the brakes, I said. I watched her reaction when I said this. Her face showed sadness, disappointment, and anger. How long will it take? She asked. It would probably take me most of the night if I did them all, I said. Can I take you up on your offer later? Can we do it tomorrow night? She looked at me strangely, and all kinds of thoughts went through me. Maybe I had other plans tomorrow, she smiled. After all, we don't do this almost every night. The thought of what she had just said made me mercilessly angry. I wondered how long this had been going on. All I knew was that it was over now. Darling, I really wish you would stop and just get into bed with me, she said. Honey, I really wish you'd let me do my breaks because I just spent the whole day cooking and entertaining people at your mom's party. For you, I countered. If you really love me, you'll put off the breaks until later, she said. If you really love me, you'll let me do my breaks, I added. What's wrong with you, Donnie? She asked. Usually you're chasing me for sex from the moment we wake up until the last second our eyes are open. And today, when I spent the whole morning trying to help my mom find someone new to love, you don't want that. Do you realize how many women today told me how lucky I am to have you? Even Tanya told me what she would do to you if I wasn't in the pictures. So I really want to do some of these things right now. They'll still be possible tomorrow, I said. And with that, I walked away, leaving her standing there. Okay, she shouted to me through the door. And knowing Penny as I know her, I've seen it all now. The reason she was so desperate to have sex with me tonight was because it wouldn't happen tomorrow. She was going to pretend to be tired or something. But the real reason was that she was sure she wouldn't want to have sex with me after sleeping with whoever she was meeting at the motel. Perhaps I was jumping to conclusions. I didn't know how to deal with it until it happened. Maybe there was something else going on. My brain latched on to this TV show where a woman dated a guy multiple times and her insanely jealous husband found out about it. My husband worked on a cement truck, and he was so worried about what his wife was doing that he drove home in the middle of work to check on her. He saw a new convertible in his yard and saw a guy walk into his house. He backed up to the convertible and poured out the entire batch of cement, destroying the car. It turns out his wife wasn't cheating on him. She financed the Mustang as a gift for him, and he ruined it. She eventually divorced him. The next morning, I went to work as usual. I didn't do anything unusual. I woke up and Penny made me breakfast. As she leaned over the table, placing bacon on my plate, I hugged her and pinched her. "Oh, so all you had to do last night was play with your stupid car," she said. "And now suddenly you're ready." "Sorry," I said. "I love you, Pen." I kissed her so passionately that she was out of breath. "What happened to you this morning?" she asked, smiling. "I just wanted you to know how much I appreciate you," I said. I felt like this was my last chance to convince her not to do something we would both regret. At the same time, if nothing happened and I made it all up, I won't feel so guilty after that. I went to work, and as soon as I got there, I threw myself into my morning tasks. By 9:30, I was ahead of schedule and had almost nothing to work with. I worked a couple more hours and left at 11:30. As soon as I left the building, Penny called me. "Hello, darling," she said. "Would you like to have lunch with your wife?" "I'd like to," I said, smiling. "Do you want me to meet you at home or at a restaurant?" I breathed a sigh of relief. I was so glad I came to the wrong conclusion. "Wait, honey, I have another call," she said. She returned a few seconds later. "Donnie, can we reschedule lunch until tomorrow? Mom needs to talk," she said. "I'll probably be busy tomorrow," I answered and hung up. I called Judy. "Hi," I said. "How is your day?" "Even better after talking with my favorite brother-in-law," she said, smiling. "I'm your only son-in-law," I remarked dryly. "But you're still my favorite," she said. "Have you talked to Penny yet today, Judy?" I asked. "She's going to ask you something." "I hope you're not going to try to match me with any of your single friends again," she said. "Honestly, I'm not sure I'm ready to date someone right now." "No, I just wanted to invite you to dinner for the three of us," I said. "Oh, okay," she said, smiling. "It will be nice. When she calls, I'll pretend to be surprised." "Bye, Judy," I said. "Have a good day." This call delayed me another 10 minutes, and now I knew that Penny had called to make sure I was at work. She may have learned some tricks of deception from her father, but then that old man got caught anyway. I got into the car and drove to the motel. There were several cars in the parking lot that seemed familiar to me. It didn't matter. I recognized Penny's Ford Focus as soon as I got there. I knew which room she would be in. I saw the cleaning lady and paid her $50 to quietly open the door to the room. She stepped back and I opened the door. Behind him was a familiar thick back and thinning hair that seemed familiar to me. As soon as I pulled the door open, he tried to turn around to see what was happening. I crossed the room instantly and pulled him out of bed. I slammed him onto the hard, cheap floorboards and started beating him. He didn't even try to defend himself. "Donnie, you're going to kill him," Penny screamed, trying to pull me away. I stood up very calmly and took her hands off me. "Don't ever touch me again," I said calmly. I called my secretary and told her that I was not feeling well and would not be able to come in for the rest of the day and possibly the next day. The second call I made was to 911 to report the assault. Penny just sat on the bed. A couple of times she tried to tell me something, and I just kept telling her to shut up. "Donnie, when we get home," she finally began. "We don't have a house," I said. "I won't live with a slut. Stay with your mom, Penny." The police arrived, and I left the room and spoke to them. "I'm the one who called," I said. "You look good," one of the policemen said. "I'm not, it's him," I said, pointing to Rick, who was still unconscious. I was handcuffed and put in the car as soon as the ambulance arrived. I didn't say much in the police car. The officers tried to get me to talk about what happened. Although I had no problem admitting what I had done, I was simply too depressed to talk about it. As soon as I got to the station, I was photographed, fingerprinted, and put on the record as a suspect in the assault. Until the details of the case were revealed, they only had suspicions. Even though I was willing to tell them I did it, they had no proof. In every big city in the world, there are countless psychos who confess to all crimes. There are also groups of homeless people who will confess to a crime just to get some food and a lie down on a bed. This is especially true in bad weather, when some people give up freedom for the sake of a roof over their heads. I was placed in a large holding cell with at least 8 other guys. None of them approached me, and I was content to sit on an empty bench against the back wall. Most of the guys looked either poor or drunk. I decided to use my time wisely. Since all I could do was think, it seemed like the perfect time to figure out my next move. There is a big difference between suspecting that your spouse is cheating on you and facing the reality of it. There is also the issue of emotional attachment. Let's face it, people change over time. In many cases, a couple has simply become so distant from each other that one of them does something drastic just to get things moving. In such cases, a subsequent divorce can be the beginning of a new life for both. In such cases, parting can be a pleasant event. There are others where the couple has fought so much over the years that they simply can't stand each other. They fight not because they love each other and want to stay together, but because they hate each other and want to make the other's life as miserable as possible. For example, I won't let this asshole get a divorce so he can marry his damn secretary and be happy. My case was none of these. I loved Penny with all my heart and soul. Until I walked into that motel room and saw her with Rick. I intended to spend the rest of my life with her. That's why it hurt so much. I literally felt like someone had managed to rip out a piece of my soul. I didn't understand this. We had a wonderful sex life, and I really thought that we loved each other. At least I loved her. And the guy she chose, Rick, was older than me, and I was 6 years older than Penny. Riku is almost the same age as her mother, and he is fat and balding. I just didn't understand it. If she wants an old fat guy, why the hell did she marry me? In fact, she was the one who pursued me when we first started dating. We met at a bar. We were both there with a group of friends. We didn't know each other, and none of our friends knew each other. She saw me, and for the rest of the night, every time I turned around, she was there. She was even the one who tried out a stupid joke on me. I remember looking into those beautiful eyes and being simply captivated. And she said, "Well, if you're going to follow me all night, you might as well tell me your name." Now I walk into a cheap motel and find that she's letting my fat old neighbor have sex with her. I was wondering how Tanya would take it. Just as I was starting to figure out what I wanted to do, I heard someone calling my name. "Don Osmond," shouted the burly policeman. I walked up to him and looked through the bars as he began to open the door. 2 other police officers stood behind him, their hands on their holsters. "Are you going to shoot me?" I asked. "No, asshole, you're out on bail," he said. "By whom?" I asked. He looked at me as if I was out of my mind. "Does it matter?" he asked. "What is the charge brought against me?" I asked. "And who released me on bail? How long have I been here?" "Listen, buddy, you have too many damn questions," he said. "Do you want to go out or not?" "Officer," I said, "I know you come across a lot of people in different situations, and it colors the way you look at everyone. You've heard it all too many times to repeat. But this is a new experience for me. This is the first time I've been in prison for—" The 2 other police officers turned to look at him. "Okay, ask," he said. "It's 2 o'clock in the afternoon. You've been here for almost 2 hours. I spoke in a low tone so that only he and the other police officers who were keeping an eye on the other prisoners could hear me. "This afternoon I walked in on my wife and my roommate together in a motel room. I admit I handled the situation poorly. I just don't want to see her or him anymore. So if it's Penny trying to bail me out using my own money because she doesn't have a damn job, I'd rather stay here. I don't want anything to do with her anymore." "Sorry, guy," he said. "It's her. She was here and she was crying all the time. But you probably don't have anything to worry about. Some fat guy and his lawyer came to talk to the prosecutor. I don't think he'll press charges against you. But he looks suspicious, so I wouldn't trust him. Anyway, they're going to keep you here for a couple of days to cool off before they let you use the ATM and let you out on bail, considering you have no criminal record and no one died. They left, looking at me with something like pity in their eyes. I sat back down on the bench and noticed that many of my fellow inmates were looking at me. I'm sure they were wondering what I was talking about with the cops and why I didn't leave. I knew Penny was trying to bail me out because she felt guilty. I was honest with the police. I didn't want anything to do with her anymore. I felt bad at that moment because I had actually helped convince Judy to give Ed another chance when I wasn't willing to do that for Penny myself. I wondered if this was how Judy felt when Ed cheated on her. Ed did this over and over again, so Judy experienced it more than once. I couldn't understand how she stood it. She must be much stronger than me. It's a strange feeling. If you think about a person long enough, they will appear. Just as I was wondering if Penny would tell Judy what she did, my cops returned. Hey, Osmond, another beautiful woman came to see you. She's not the first, so it must be her sister. She said her name is Judy. She's in the interrogation room. Do you want to see her? Yes, I said. He made me put both hands through the bars together, then handcuffed me again. He then opened the door while the others had their hands on their guns and led me out, closing the door behind him. We walked down the corridor and entered a divided room. There was a large panel of armored glass with small holes in certain places so people could talk to each other. I sat up and looked through the glass at Judy. For a minute, neither of us spoke. Hi, Donnie, she said. What happened? So Penny didn't tell you anything, I asked. She just said you beat up your neighbor and went to jail, and you wouldn't let her bail you because you were upset about it, she said. But I know you, Donnie. I have a bad feeling about this. Judy, she cheated on me, I said. Her face changed. Not with. Isn't he disgusting? She asked in shock. But why? As far as I understand, you always. Before we could continue our conversation, a tall man in a cheap suit and glasses knocked on the wall. Sorry, he said. Are you Don Osmond? I nodded. Can you join me in the conference room across the street when you're done here? He pointed to my handcuffs, and the police took them off. He's not a flight risk. He has no criminal record. Why is he in handcuffs? He's here for assault, the policeman said. Though I would do the same. He's actually here for the traitor, not for the attack. Donnie, what are you going to do? Judy asked. I know how you feel, so don't do anything stupid. I'll call you tomorrow, I said. If I leave here today, I will send your daughter to you. I walked into the conference room and saw 3 men sitting at a table with Penny. I didn't recognize 2 of them. When I walked in, Penny jumped to her feet and Rick stood up and limped toward me. Get away from me, I screamed. I looked at the man sitting at the table. If any of these people come near me, I will return to my cell. Penny and Rick returned to their seats, and the man at the table looked at them. Mr. Osmond, I'm Willis Drummond. I'm the district attorney for this area. I have literally thousands of cases crossing my desk every day. Mr. Daniels here is the lawyer representing your neighbor. Basically, Mr. Daniels has proposed a deal that will allow everyone here to go their separate ways immediately, so to speak, without harm to all parties. What are you talking about, Willis? I asked. Why don't you tell him? Charlie, he told Daniels. The lawyer looked at me and started talking as if we were old friends. Well, Don, what happened here was an accident. The emotional toll is terrible. There is no reason for you to leave this room with a criminal record that will cause you problems for the rest of your life. These are very serious charges. Don't worry about it, I said. With my education and my specialty, my employer and future employers will not give this importance. He swallowed his saliva. Well, There's no need to hurt an innocent person over some hobby that got out of control, he said. There's no reason for that. Who's innocent in this damn room? I asked. Only me. I'm the one who got hurt. At this point, Penny began to cry. I thought I had a woman that I could love and spend the rest of my life with. It turns out that's not the case. I thought I had a neighbor, or even a friend living next door to me, whom I could trust. It turned out that this was not the case either. Donnie, what about Tony? Rick asked. Tanya never did anything bad to you. Why should she suffer because of all this? Tanya deserves to know what kind of person she's living with. She doesn't deserve to be deceived. Nobody deserves that, I said. Tanya is wonderful. She'll get through this. She'll end up with someone much better for her than you ever were. She'll be fine. Maybe we'll get through this together. No, he shouted. Please don't tell her. Daniels began to speak again. Here's the deal. My client agrees not to press charges against you, and you will forget everything that happened. I'll accept the charges, I said. I also insist on a trial by jury. When 12 of our fellow citizens find out why I beat your client, they will tie him and you together and cover him with tar and feather. I will also name him in my divorce suit and sue him for everything possible. I will testify in Tony's divorce too, I said. Here's my plan. The four of them grouped together and spoke in low voices. Rick and Penny seemed to be arguing. Finally, they looked at me again. What do you want? They asked. Nothing, I said. I won't tell Tanya anything. I give you my word. And I won't sue you or mention you in my divorce. But you must testify in my divorce if necessary and drop the charges. You also agree to never do not talk to me or come within 15 meters of me or anything of mine without my permission. Sold, he said, with a smile on his face. Hey, wait a minute. I know I'm closer than 15 meters from here now, but it doesn't start until I leave the building, right? Rick, I don't care what you do with her. She's not mine anymore. As far as I'm concerned, you can have fun with each other until the cows come home. Once my divorce is finalized, I'll never see her again. She is yours now. Can I leave? No, Donnie, Penny screamed. No, we won't do that. Willis, can you walk me to the counter so I can get my things? I need my wallet to call a taxi home. As I walked down the hallway, all I could hear was the sound of Penny crying. When I arrived home, Tanya was outside in her yard. She came to the fence and spoke to me. Where have you been, stranger? She asked. My husband was caught in the wrong area and he was beaten. Both his eyes were hit and his nose was broken. Poor guy. This is bad. Tanya, I said. I'm sorry to be so harsh, but I had a rough day too. I'll talk to you later. Hey, send your wife here, she said. Tanya, I don't have a wife anymore, I said. I then went into the house, leaving her in shock. As soon as I entered the house, the phone started ringing. I noticed it was Penny's cell phone, the same phone that told me about her actions. I just let him call until the answering machine came on. After the fifth ring, the phone went silent, but suddenly rang again. This time it was Judy's home number. I picked up the phone to tell Judy to stop her daughter. Judy, can you? I began. Darling, you need. I hung up. About half an hour passed before the phone rang again. I looked at it, and it was Judy's cell phone. I picked up the phone and didn't say anything. Donnie, honey, are you there? She asked. Hi, Judy, I said. I had to give Penny some hot tea with a couple of sleeping pills. She laughed. She's going crazy. She cries and screams, blaming everyone for ruining her life. I don't even doubt it, I said sadly. But there's no one in particular to blame. Oh, she blames your neighbor Rick the most. He says that he also set her up in the deal you agreed to. She also blames you for your behavior. How am I behaving? I asked. Donnie, you don't act like me, she said quietly, and that's exactly what she expected. Will this ever get better? I asked. No, she said, even quieter than me. It only gets worse over time. You start to doubt yourself. You wonder what you're missing that makes him want to be with another woman. You wonder what you're doing wrong, and you start comparing yourself to every new person you meet. You wonder if he'll start sleeping with her now. And it gets worse over time, because no matter how much time passes, you will never be the same. You will never regain the trust you lost. You spend your life testing them. Every time he's late or not where he's supposed to be, you imagine he's cheating on you. Judy, can I tell you something? I asked. Certainly. We are family, she said. I lied to you, I said, when we tried to get you to go back to Ed and go to counseling. Then I thought you should have dumped his cheater. But you told me what Penny wanted because you love her so much, she finished. I know, Donnie. You are a terrible liar. Your mouth said one thing, but your eyes said another. Ed was stupid, I said. No one he could cheat with was worth even a quarter of you. It looks like it runs in the family, she said. I can't believe she let that disgusting fat guy even get close to her, let alone. Judy, I'm sorry, but I'm not you, I said. As bad as I feel right now, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to keep taking her back where she'll just wait a little and then try it again. What line did she say about her father? You can't argue with nature. Maybe she got it from him, but it's just something about her. I hope that's not the case, she said. What about all those wild animals that are trained to perform in the circus and those that people keep as pets? I think in some cases you can fight nature. But Judy, these are very rare cases, and they require a lot of work and a reward system. With these circus animals, they must start training them when they are still very young. I don't want to stand over Penny with a whip and spank her every time she misbehaves. I'm definitely not going to throw her a piece of steak or reward her for not sleeping with someone else. I believe her. Judy, I think she's right. We're just stupid. You can't argue with nature. Cheaters will cheat. What does that make of us? She asked quietly. That makes us one of two, I said. If we free ourselves from this and start our lives over, then we are what we are by nature. We're just good people who made mistakes and fell in love with the wrong people. In your case, you made a wonderful daughter. I have nothing, so at this point my life was wasted. On the other hand, if we continue to tolerate it, hoping in vain that they will change, then we become fools. We are just ready to continue to endure it, no matter what. You've served your time in hell, Judy. Your next man should be someone who deserves you, and my next woman too. Who are you talking to? Mom? I heard Penny ask. Is this Donnie? Does he want to talk to me? Did you tell him how sorry I am? Did you tell him it wasn't my fault? Bye, Judy, I said. I see you have a lot to do. I talked to Judy a lot over the next few days. Tanya and some women from the area came to me and brought me food and talked to me to cheer me up. I hired a lawyer and prepared a divorce agreement. I prepared what I thought was a very fair agreement. I made good money. I wanted to divide our property in half, just like a judge would do. I knew it wasn't really fair to me, but I didn't want Penny to be left destitute. I had no intention of trying to save our relationship. I didn't want to be rude, but if necessary, I was willing to drag Rick into court or force him to sign a statement. If things got worse, I was willing to be an asshole if necessary. I would just take most of the money out of my accounts and leave her what she could get from selling our share of the house. My lawyer questioned Rick and forced him to tell him everything that happened between him and Penny. This went on for more than 6 months. He was also sure that he was not the first. I asked Judy if I could come over and talk to her and Penny. I pulled up and Judy opened the door for me. I hugged her and kissed her on the cheek. Penny came up to me. Oh, honey, you have no idea how much I missed you, she said. Penny, I came here to make it as easy as possible for you, I said. I didn't want you to be surprised by a stranger handing you the divorce papers, so I brought them myself. No, Donnie, she screamed. I'll stop. This will not happen again. You should give me one more chance. It was a mistake. I just couldn't help myself. I'll go to counseling. Penny, this won't help, I said. This is not the first time this has happened. My lawyer questioned Rick. We know everything. You and Rick continued this for over 6 months. And I don't think Rick was the first. How could you even look me in the eye? And how could you pretend to be Tony's friend while you were sleeping with her husband? Baby, it was only sex, she said. You and I are so much more than just sex, she continued. You and I are much less than that, I said. We were so much more than that. Now all that's left is a ring of gold, and this ring means nothing when the vows we made have been broken. Donnie, please, she began. No, Penny, I replied. I don't want to live like this. It's just not fair, she complained. You're breaking my heart. What will you do if I kill myself? There would be nothing left for me to do, I said. I would probably jump to the side to avoid getting dirty. No, you have to forgive me. You love me. Damn it, she complained. Penny, shut up, Judy said. Mom, don't interfere, Penny said. It is simply unfounded. This is not how it should work. He just doesn't forgive me. I can't eat. I cannot sleep. I love him so much. I feel like my heart is breaking. Cry now, Judy shouted. I was shocked because I had never heard her swear before. You're just like your dad, Penny, Judy said. You act as if the whole world revolves around you and what you want. I have forgiven your father over and over again. And maybe you started to think that this is how it should be. Donnie is not me. You are a grown woman, so act like it. You had a perfect marriage and you ruined everything. You not only made the bed, you lay in it voluntarily. Now live with it. It's hard for Donnie too. I can't believe you could do this to someone who loves you so much. Then I remembered that your father did this to me. I'm glad he got rid of it. I only wish that I could do the same. But Mom, I feel bad too, Penny said. I admitted that I was wrong, and I am very sorry. It hurts me too, you know? Penny, you caused this. As much as you are my daughter, and I love you, maybe you deserve it. Sooner or later, you will have to take responsibility for your actions. I agree, Penny said. But I don't think what I did is bad enough to warrant a divorce. Is it really up to the one you offended to decide? Asked Judy. Marriage is what two people want. Penny, maybe Donnie doesn't want to be married to you anymore. Stop saying that, Mom, Penny screamed. She turned to me and looked across the room. Donnie, haven't I been a good wife to you so far? I cleaned your house. I cooked your lunches. I gave you all the sex you could ever want. I gave you everything you could ask for from a wife. So why can't you focus on all the things I did right instead of the one thing I did wrong? Honey, you look just like I feel, she continued. You look like someone suddenly pulled the rug out from under your feet and just left you spinning in the air with no way to find your balance and nothing to grab onto. I feel the same way. I'm just lost without you. I can't stop crying. It seems to me that my life is over. Nothing makes sense. You can make us both happier. You only need to forgive me once. I swear to you, this won't happen again. I left the room without saying a word. When I reached the door, I turned around and looked at her. Penny, please get a lawyer, I said. I want this to end as soon as possible. I need to start my life again. I drove home and saw Tanya again when I walked up onto my porch. Hey, Donnie, wait, she screamed. I sighed and watched her cross the yard. Tanya was wearing old jean shorts and a t-shirt that looked tattered from gardening. The t-shirt had the name of some obscure band printed on it and was almost soaked in sweat. Apparently, Tanya forgot to wear a bra or just decided she didn't need one while she was working in the garden. I need to tell you a couple of things, she said. Tanya wasn't as slender as Penny or Judy, but her curves took her to a whole other level of sexy. It seems that when I was happily married, I simply did not notice my attraction to her. But now that I'm done with Penny, the dam has broken. Why are you looking at me like that? She asked. Sorry, I said. I do not have one. Donnie, I just wanted you to know that Rick and I are here for you, she said. If you need something or if you just want to talk. In fact, I think it would be beneficial for him too. He still hasn't gotten over how he was robbed. I think he's lost some of his confidence. You know, that male ego you guys have? Well, it's like he got it ruined because some idiot beat him to a pulp and took all his money. Perhaps talking to you would help him. You know how it works. When you help someone with their problems, it makes you feel strong. I think it would be good for Rick. I will send it to you after a while. But there is something I would like to do for you. I couldn't help but look at her breasts again, and she noticed and smiled, wrapping her arms around her chest. You'll be fine, she smiled. But that's not what I meant. You know, I'm married. Besides, you're not that kind of guy. I shrugged and tried to smile. Donnie, I know you are going through a very difficult time. I don't know if you and Penny can survive this or not, but I thought you might want to get away from it all for a bit. So I work at a travel agency, and we organize a lot of group tours and trips, and I was able to arrange something for you if you wanted. I just smiled at her and thought again about telling her what a terrible person she married, but I realized that telling her this would only bring her pain. There was also the fact that on both sides of the beating I gave Rick and the thought of losing his marriage, Rick was probably trying to be the husband she deserves. Why should I hurt her just to get pleasure from her? By doing this, I would become just like Penny and Rick. It's a cruise, Donnie. We have a client, a large site for singles. They organized a cruise for many of their members on a large cruise ship. They have already paid the fees for their members, and there are still cabins available on the ship. They've already made their profit, so it doesn't matter if another single guy ends up on the cruise. 10 days of fun, sun, and laughter to help heal a broken heart. Who knows, you might even meet someone. I'll think about it, Tanya, I said. But I don't really think I should try to meet anyone until my divorce goes through. See what I mean, she smiled. You are a kind person to the core. Whatever Penny does, I hope she realizes how stupid she is. Let me know about the cruise, okay? I did everything I could to make things right with Penny. My lawyer took care of the divorce, and I took care of my life. I asked my boss for a transfer to another area and told him why I needed to leave. It took him a couple of days, but he helped me. We had a plant in Phoenix that spent over a month interviewing engineers. A new place seemed just what I needed for a fresh start. The warm weather and the ability to drive my car all year round also attracted me. I had to leave everything and everyone I knew behind, but that's how a new life begins. I discussed my idea of leaving with Judy, and she seemed very sad. When I explained my reasons to her, she agreed with me and said she felt the same way. She was still grieving Ed's death. Her feelings were very similar to mine in trying to cope with her daughter's betrayal. She, too, was thinking about moving east to live with her older sister and mother, who lived together in a house in New York. My stories about my move made her think about it again. I talked her into not telling Penny about my plans. Honey, I won't have to tell her, she said. This girl is obsessed with you. She spends most of her time following you. She's so afraid that you'll try to have a relationship with another woman that she's going crazy. She was furious when you stood on the porch talking to Tanya the other day. She returned home and cried for hours, calling Tanya every name possible. I think her biggest fear is that you will become attracted to Tanya and tell her what happened. Then you and Tanya will get together, and she will remain in the past. She laughed after she said this. Actually, it's not that incredible, I said. It really is, she said. Donnie, you really love my stupid daughter. I saw how it was spinning in your head when you talked to her the other day. You tried so hard to think of a way to take her back. But I was glad that you couldn't. She's my daughter and I love her. But I love you too, Donnie, and we both know who she really is. Well, at least when this is all over, you'll have a friend in Arizona to go to when it gets too cold in New York, I said. And you'll have someone in Rotten Apple if you want a little non-New England culture, she laughed. Donnie, promise me we'll stay in touch. I don't have a choice, I said. I've only had two people I've loved, and one of them doesn't really love me. So, all I have left is you. I was glad she told me about how Penny had been following me. I started paying attention to her whenever I went anywhere. One night, I went to the movies and looked around as I got out of the car in the parking lot. I noticed her following me and decided to have some fun. I looked at my watch as if I was waiting for someone. I then took out my phone and used my Fandango app to purchase a ticket. I called Judy and asked her to call Penny and let her know that my date was waiting for me inside the theater. Penny got out of the car and walked towards me angrily. I quickly ran into the cinema and told the man at the box office that I had ordered tickets online. He looked at his computer and handed them to me, and I walked to the right side of the building, just as an angry Penny walked through the door. She tried to walk in the direction she saw me and was stopped by the guards. By the time she was escorted to the box office, she realized that she had no way of knowing what movie I was there to see, and there were at least 15 films showing in the cinema. 2 hours later, I left the cinema. Bye, I shouted, waving my hand as if I was talking to someone. I felt great. We'll have to repeat it. Stop it, Donnie, Penny said. Just stop this nonsense. You went to the cinema alone. I've been watching you since you left the building. Get used to it, Penny, I said. I won't always be alone. Sooner or later, I will meet someone I want to date, and maybe even more. I might even meet someone I can spend the rest of my life with. You've already met her, fool. She looks just like me, Penny said. You just need to start trying to get over my one little mistake. I laughed out loud and drove away. Then I realized that everything Judy had told me was true. I trusted Judy. I was sure she wouldn't let Penny know about my plans, but I still needed a way to leave town without letting her know where I was going. The answer came from the most unexpected source. The next day, as soon as I returned home, I heard a soft knock on the back door. I walked to the door and opened it. If I had to make a list of all the people I could expect to see, I would never include him on the list. Rick stood at my back door, just like he used to when we were friends. The only difference now was his body language. He knew he didn't belong here anymore. I don't think he was confident that I wouldn't just beat him up again. I didn't want to come, he said nervously. She made me. His eyes quickly darted over his shoulder. I saw Tanya looking at us from her back porch. She smiled and waved. Come in, buddy, I said loud enough for my voice to carry into their house. I did everything you asked, he said nervously, and I appreciate that you didn't say anything to Tanya. But if Tanya hadn't forced me to come here, I would still have had to call you. We have a problem. We have no common problems, I snorted. We have nothing in common. It's true, he said, but we both have a problem with your psychopathic ex. She threatened to tell Tanya herself if I didn't try to help her get you back. She says it's unfair for one of us to stay in our marriage while we both cheated. She came to me yesterday. She's blackmailing me for information about you and wants me to pressure you into taking it back. I just looked at him. If he had hoped for my sympathy, he was disappointed. Suddenly, I realized that I could use it to solve my problem. Rick, do it, I said. He looked at me in surprise. Does she know about the cruise Tanya organized for me? I asked. I don't think so, he said. Here's your information, I said. Give her all the information about the cruise. This should make her happy for a while. It would be especially nice if you told her that you tried to get me to forgive her. Make her think that if we're on this ship together with nowhere to go, there's a good chance we'll talk. Okay, he said. I will do anything to save my marriage. I just looked at him. You can go, I said. The next day, Tanya called me. Donnie, somehow Penny found out about the cruise. Should I book her on the wrong cruise or something? Or do you want me to book her in the same cabin as yours or next to you? She asked. I could book you two together, even though it's a singles cruise. Tanya, do you get a commission on the cruises you book? I asked. Well, yes, she said, but I don't need to try to get rich at the expense of my friends. Tanya, make her pay for everything, I said. You are doing me a huge favor, and you help me more than you'll ever know. Are you two getting back together? She asked. No chance of that, I said. But why? She asked. What are you two mad about? She cheated on me, Tanya, I said sadly. I found them together. There is no chance for error or misunderstanding. I saw them with my own eyes. There is no chance for us to be together again. I just need to get away from her. Over the next few days, I began preparing for my move. I looked at houses via the internet. I contacted relocation companies and called the new office in Phoenix. Everything was ready for the move. I was still talking to Judy on the phone. We called each other at least twice a day. The saddest day before I left was the day Judy left for New York. I went to see her to say goodbye, and of course Penny was there. She was so busy getting ready for the cruise that she didn't keep an eye on me the last few days. She smiled at me as she opened the door for me. I miss you so much, darling, she said. I ignored her and walked towards Judy. Judy gave me the longest, tightest hug of my life. I barely restrained myself from lowering my hands from her waist to her buttocks. It's a shame you don't hug your wife like you hug my mom, Penny said. In a way, it's good that Mom is going to live with her grandmother and Aunt Nina. I think you're confused about who you love. Judy and I laughed and moved away from each other. Penny drove Judy to the airport. I finished saying goodbye and promised to call Judy every day. I wish you would call me so we could talk, Penny said. You know you're wasting your time, right? This divorce will take decades. By the time we actually get to court, you'll have forgotten why you wanted the divorce. I also know that you took a large amount of money from our account. I didn't say anything about it because I took it too. Isn't it a strange coincidence? Again, I just walked away from her. She was so happy, it was like she was ready to explode at the thought of us being on a cruise together. She acted like we were going on a second honeymoon, not like we were on a cruise on the same ship, but not together. In fact, the idea that I might contact other women while she was there didn't even occur to her. 3 days later, I was ready to start my journey. Tanya organized everything so that the cruise was everything I needed. Right before the ship left, I called Penny. Penny, I'm going away for 10 days, I told her. If you need to tell me anything regarding our divorce, you will have to talk to my lawyer. Thank you for telling me, she replied happily. I hope you enjoy it wherever you go. Perhaps when your journey is over, you will no longer want a divorce. Maybe something will happen while you're away that will remind you how much I love you and that we need each other. Unlikely, I said, laughing. She laughed too. Is it so hard for you to admit that you still love me, Donnie? She asked. No, that's not true, I said. I still love you. I just wish you would love me enough for me to be enough for you. You are enough, fool, she said sadly. Have you ever heard the expression, once bitten, twice shy? In our case, it means that I've seen what my life is like without you, so I won't do it anymore. Yes, Donnie, I am human. I made a mistake, but love has nothing to do with it. It was only about sex. Something drew me to Rick, and even I don't know what it was. Maybe we'll find out what it was when we go to therapy. But you're the only man I've ever loved. Since you love old sayings so much, I said, have you ever heard that you can't argue with nature? She just sighed when I hung up. 6 hours later, the ship was at sea. He was almost out of cell service range when my phone rang again. I looked at my iPhone screen and smiled. I saw the landscape passing by while looking out the window. And yes, I know that windows on a ship are called portholes. Penny may have had a porthole to look out, but I had a window. Where the hell are you? She shouted. I searched this whole damn ship, and you're not on it. Who said I had to be? I laughed. How the hell are we supposed to make up if we don't spend time together? She shouted. You won't let me go home. You don't touch me, and you let me touch you, and you barely talk to me. I'm going crazy. I love you, Donnie. Okay, Penny, I said. Once the cruise is over, I'll probably cool off. You can go home, but we won't sleep together. I swear that I will do everything possible to regain my place in your bed and in your heart, she said, just as the phone began to buzz. I love you, Donnie. Then the phone disconnected. I was still laughing as I crossed yet another state line. I took the time to call my only friend. Hi, Judy, I said when she answered the phone. Donnie, she exclaimed happily. God, it's been so long since you called me. Almost 4 hours, I said, laughing. I'm starting to think I made a mistake, she said. Can you imagine what it's like to live with two grumpy old ladies? I laughed again. Judy always cheered me up. Stop lying, Judy. I can't believe anyone would ever not want to be around you, I said. Donnie, do you know what time is? She asked. They say time heals all wounds, I said. They are wrong, she said seriously. I guess I forgot that my sister and I just never got along. She and my mother lived together for so long that their personalities became similar. So now I don't get along with any of them. I laughed again. Do you check your rearview mirrors to make sure no one is following you? She asked. It's kind of hard to keep track of a truck when you're on a ship, I said. Now it was her turn to laugh. I won't even ask how you managed to get her on the ship without you, she said. Remember those Calgon commercials? I said. I had my own ancient Chinese secret. I loved those commercials, she said. I should probably go and make some tapioca for Mom. Be careful on the road, dear. I got to Phoenix late the next day. The first thing I did was park my Mustang in the garage. I was so glad she would never have to endure cold winters again that I didn't even think about the heat and possible sun damage to the paint. I spent the next few days getting everything organized and settled into the new home. I arranged for the cable guy and all the other guys to come and do their job. But when it was all done, the place was beautiful. But it didn't feel like home. It was just a place. The day before I was supposed to report to my new job, it happened. My cell phone rang. I picked up the phone without looking at the screen. Where are you? She hissed. Why are all your things gone? You said I could go home. If you're calling from home, that means you're home, I said. Isn't this what you wanted? You know very well that this is not what I wanted, she hissed. I don't want an empty house. It's almost as bad as this ridiculous divorce you're trying to get. Oh, don't worry about the divorce, I said. Your lawyer and my lawyer convinced me that without evidence I was in a difficult situation. I was practically at your mercy. So the whole divorce over your affair with Rick is over. Okay, she exclaimed. So where are you, dear? I come to you. I applied again, I said, and this time I'm not going to be so kind. She started laughing. What difference does it make why you apply? She asked. Call your lawyer, Penny, I said. He already has a copy of the file. Not only will I get a divorce, but most likely I will be able to leave you almost nothing. Oh, and Penny, you better call me back quickly if you want to work this out. I'm changing my phone number tomorrow. An hour later, Penny called me back. Okay, Donnie, you win. I signed the papers. How did you manage to get the video? I hired a private investigator to take my place on the cruise. I knew that without me, you wouldn't be able to control your urges. I just gave you freedom. You can't fight nature. As for the video, I didn't even watch it. I didn't want to see someone I once loved having sex with a bunch of strangers she'd never see again. Thank you for proving that I was right about you. Donnie, I can change, she said. I don't think you can, I said. And to be honest, I don't think you should. You are now free. Do what you want. I'm free too. I can find someone who will love me the way I need. Donnie, you just don't understand, she cried. It's me. Haven't you figured it out yet? My father loved my mother more than anything in the world. Yes, he cheated on her, but it didn't mean anything. It was just sex. What they had was love. That's why she could never leave him. And you and I are the same. Will you miss me? And when it happens, I will be here, waiting for you. But I will make you regret putting me through all this. When you come back to me, I will make you kiss my feet before I take you back." 3 weeks later, I made my daily call to Judy. I immediately detected a note of sadness in her voice. "Okay, Judy, what's wrong?" I asked. "I'm fine," she said, "just feeling a little unwell." "Judy, don't try to give me that bullshit. I know you," I said. "Tell me what's wrong." "Donnie, moving here was a mistake," she said. "I used almost all the money I got from selling my house to pay off back taxes on the place and make a few improvements. Now I'm stuck here. I still have money from Ed's pension, but it's a monthly check to cover my expenses. I don't have enough money to move anywhere, let alone buy another house. I had all these ideas about how great it would be to move back in with my family. I probably just didn't want to be alone. I spent over 20 years living with someone else and it's good that you still have family to move with," I said. "Oh no," she said. "This is impossible. You have no idea what Penny has been doing since you divorced her." "No, I don't know," I said. "But I didn't talk about her. Why can't you come here and live with me? I have a lot of space, and I would really like it if you were here with me." "Donnie, are you crazy?" she asked. "I can't live with you. You are my daughter's husband." "No longer a husband," I said. "Why don't you come visit? And if you don't like it, you can always go back to New York." "Okay," she said. "How about a week away? I need to make sure you're okay. I was visiting Penny and your old house. Well, you wouldn't recognize it." Judy came and stayed with me for a week. She liked it so much that when it was time to leave, she didn't want to. We did different things together and had fun. She made me go out and see all the sights in the area that I had never bothered to see before. We also went shopping, and she made me buy a lot of things for the house. In just a week, my house started to feel like home. I was terribly sad at the thought of her leaving. She didn't say a word to me, and I assumed that I would be driving her to the airport the next day. She made me breakfast in the morning and asked why I was so gloomy. "Our week is over," I said. "You won't be missed. Will you be back to visit soon?" "No," she said, smiling. "And actually, Donnie, I don't think you want me to come back." "Judy, you are my best friend." "Of course I want to," I said. "Would you like to come back and visit me?" "No," she said, smiling. "Because if I come back to visit you, that means I'm gone, and I don't want that." I smiled and hugged her. We had another one of those long, tight hugs, and I think we both felt something. But neither of us was ready to admit it. The next morning I woke up early and she made me breakfast again. "I can't send you to work with an empty stomach," she said. "Besides, I'll be driving today. I need a car to go shopping. We need food." "Are you sure you don't want to just drive the truck?" I asked. She pulled out that full lip and extended her hand. For some reason, the alarm bells didn't ring in my head. Even though I never let Penny drive my Mustang, the thought of Judy driving her didn't seem terrible. I carefully placed the keys in her hand and was rewarded with a smile that made my day. After breakfast, we got into the car and drove to my office. I expected her to leave, but she got out of the car and came in with me. She toured my office and even met my secretary. She smiled and led me to my office. "And why aren't you with any of them?" she asked. "She's not my type," I replied. She just laughed and said she would pick me up after work. That evening, I returned home and we grilled steaks on the porch while watching the sunset. I noticed that she did more than just go shopping that day. She decorated some of the rooms. A painting here, a trinket there, and the place was already starting to feel cozier. I asked her about it, and she smiled. "I spent the whole day on my feet," she said. "But it was worth it if you like what I did." "I like it. The decorations are beautiful," I told her. "Wait until you get into bed tonight," she said. Unfortunately, she was only talking about new sheets. I took off her shoes and started massaging her feet. I was very gentle at first, but as she started moaning and moaning, I increased the pressure and she liked it even more. I moved to her ankles, then her calves. Her head was thrown back and her eyes were closed. I stopped there. I'm not sure which of us was more surprised that I stopped, but she smiled at me. "It was wonderful," she said. I just nodded. I wasn't sure what to say. Over the next few weeks, our relationship progressed very slowly, but they developed. I think what I always felt still caught up with me somehow. It got to the point where I lived only for evenings with Judy. Sometimes we went for long walks along deserted roads and photographed landscapes and landscapes. Other evenings we spent in the city watching movies or trying new restaurants. But I think we both enjoyed the quiet evenings at home the most. I honestly believe that it was me who always suggested going out somewhere. I really think I was afraid of where it might lead if we spent too much time together. Judy often asked me to massage her. Sometimes she wanted a foot massage. Sometimes she wanted a neck and shoulder massage. Either way, the massages became more and more intense. The foot massages got to the point where I might have started at her feet, but would end up well above her knees. And the shoulder massages began to touch the top of her chest. I think we had been living together for about 5 months when it happened. It was Judy's birthday, and I wanted to take her out on the town. I bought her a gift, diamond necklace, and I made a reservation at one of the most luxurious restaurants in town. We had a great dinner, and the violinist strolled past us, ending with a frisky jazz version of Happy Birthday. I pushed the box across the table, and her eyes lit up. When she saw the necklace, her mouth dropped open, and she asked me to put it on her. When the small diamonds on the pendant sparkled between her breasts, something happened between us. I noticed her smiling, and then noticed that she was pointing behind me. I turned around and finally noticed the waiter behind me. "I was just saying, sir, that your wife is the most beautiful woman here," he said. "You're right about that," I said. "Donnie, you should have said thank you." "Stupid," Judy laughed. "Or at least fix it. He thought we were married." "I couldn't say thank you," I replied, "because that would imply that I somehow contributed to your beauty. And I couldn't fix it because I don't mind if someone thinks are you ready for dessert?" "Yes," she said. "Can we take him with us? And can we eat it at home?" I couldn't imagine how good it felt to hear her say that. The entire time she was here, she called it my house, which became home. Hearing her call it home gave me a warm feeling. When we got home, it seemed like the perfect end to a wonderful evening. It seemed strange to me. Maybe I was getting old, but at 30 I was happy. I didn't need anything else. I remember just a year ago, if Penny and I went out and didn't end the evening with sex, I would be disappointed. But as Judy walked ahead of me toward our house, I was happy just to watch her slender hips move under her dress. Watching her big ones jiggle constrained. There were almost too many breasts. But surprisingly, the most satisfying moments of the night were when she gave me her beautiful smile. Unlike her daughter's smile, which was all teeth and lips, Judy's smile spanned her entire face and seemed to begin in her heart. I lived for these moments. I would never do anything that could jeopardize what we had. One of the things Penny said suddenly came back to me. She said the woman I should spend the rest of my life with looks like this, just like her. And now I realize that although she meant herself, she was right. Judy looked the same, but was much more loving. And Judy was someone I could trust. I took off my suit and hung it in the closet. As I showered, I remembered all my favorite moments of the evening. I hoped Judy enjoyed her birthday. I got out of the shower and went to bed. The sheets were warm, and I wondered how the hell Judy had managed this until I noticed I wasn't alone. "What?" I said in surprise. "SHH," she said. "This is a very special occasion, and I don't know about you, but I didn't want this night to end. This is how I wanted it to end. I'm not my daughter, Donnie. I'm not a hot girl. But a year has passed since Ed died. I'm still a woman. I also noticed that you are not dating and have not been with anyone in the 5 months that I have been here. I think we both need this. So let's make 2 rules. First rule, no strings attached. It's just sex. Second rule, in the morning we will forget about it. We will never talk about this, and it never happened, okay? Sorry, but I can't do this, I said. I know there's an age difference, Donnie, but I'm not that bad, she said. And you haven't had sex in months. I know I'm not Penny. Judy, shut up. You're talking nonsense, I said. I'm glad you're not Penny. I survived it. What was on the ship destroyed all the remnants of my feelings for her. Then why don't you want to? She began sadly. I never said I didn't want you, I interrupted. It's your rules that I can't handle. I didn't want to risk ruining everything between us, Judy. But if we do this, it won't just be sex. At least not for me. And I could never forget it. As for commitment, we already have a waiter and everyone at my work who thinks we're married. I'd like to have a commitment with you, Judy. I want ropes. I fucking want chains and ropes. She rolled over and kissed me. It was the kind of kiss you want to feel for the rest of your life. Our lips touched gently and then pressed together. Our tongues began to explore and fight, and finally we tried to suck out each other's souls. I wanted Judy more than I've ever wanted anything in my life. But Judy was more ready than I was. I barely managed to slow her down. I love you, Judy, I said. 5 months, she said. I can't believe we were able to do this for 5 months. We couldn't, I said. Neither of us are the kind of person who would just sleep with someone. Maybe not, she laughed. But we are both people who love very deeply and very exclusively. The next evening, when I came home, dinner and something else were waiting for me. I wanted to make sure last night wasn't a fluke, she laughed. Can you do the same to me again? We made this a rule. We never mentioned Ed or Penny. The past was left behind, and we only wanted to think about the future. We had so many good moments that we still had no time for the past. We did many things for the first time together. The only thing we never talked about was marriage. I do not know why. Everyone we knew thought we were like that. We just never brought it up. But again, we were too busy living in the present and planning for the future to dwell on the past. This continued until it began to look for us. It seemed we had made one mistake. When Judy moved in with me, we had to ship the rest of her things to Phoenix from New York. Penny went looking for her mother, and her grandmother and aunt, neither of whom knew anything about our situation, happily provided her with the address. What followed was a comedy of bad timing. One Saturday, I went to buy some things so Judy and I could have a barbecue and sunbathe in our big hammock on the deck. While I was gone, Penny showed up on our porch. Judy had no choice but to invite her in, hoping I'd be gone long enough to get rid of her. Almost immediately, Penny realized that her mother did not live alone and that her housemate was probably a man. Judy confirmed this and told Penny that she would meet her for breakfast the next morning. Penny drove off, but saw my car and recognized it. She was unfamiliar with the roads and got lost for a while. I returned home and Judy decided not to give me any bad news until we could relax a little. We were simmering steaks and almost completely relaxed, with Judy screaming for me to fill her pussy, when we noticed someone had climbed up and was looking at us from the top of our 6-foot fence. Her eyes were as big as saucers, and she started screaming like a banshee. We let her in. She could have been tied up. I can't believe any of you, she screamed. Especially you, Mom. What will Dad think? How could you contact your own daughter's husband? Penny, we're not married anymore, I said. So what are you doing here? I came to try to find my mother, she said. I was hoping she would find out where you are, not that she would replace me. I need a little help. What kind of help? I asked. I kind of lost most of the money you left me, and I'm about to lose my house. I was hoping that you would give me another chance. I realized how stupid I was, she said sadly. Sorry, Penny, but there's no chance of that, I said. You can't fight nature. Yes, you can, she said. If you really want to, you can do anything. I swear I've changed. I was talking about Judy's character and myself, I smiled. It's in our nature to fall in love with someone and stay that way forever. We can't fight it. Go home, I'll put some money in your account. But you will have to find yourself a job. Why can't I stay here with you? She asked. Penny, just your presence reminds me of what you did to me and makes me angry all over again. This was the main reason why I left the city in the first place. Do you need money or not? Of course, she said. Then she looked straight at Judy. You're the one who doesn't want me here, are you, Mom? You know that if I had a chance to fight for him, you would lose. And Donnie just agrees with you, just like earlier. Poor lost man thinks he loves you, but in reality, he still loves me. He stays with you because you're like me, and he knows you won't cheat on him. Judy and I both laughed at her. We've discussed Penny and our past enough that her bullshit doesn't affect us. I would choose Judy Penny's kindness and calm personality over Judy Penny any day, and she liked the fact that the only woman I ever paid attention to was her. The fact that I was so crazy about her was a powerful aphrodisiac for both of us, and our sex life was very energetic. Penny left the next morning. She was still mad that we didn't let her stay with us, but it would have been a really awkward situation, and I was happy with the way things were, and so was Judy. I think in some ways what happened to Penny was our fault, but really we just wanted to be alone. We later found out that Penny had been sleeping with some men in the neighborhood where we lived, including some of our friends. There was a lot of gossip about this. One early morning, Tanya, I saw a couple of men leaving the house and confronted them. So Tanya found out. When she told them that they should be ashamed of themselves for embarrassing their wives in front of the neighbor's slut, they advised her to stop being so nosy and that perhaps she should keep an eye on her husband instead of everyone else, since Rick was the first guy in the area to have fun with Penny. They told her that was the reason I divorced Penny and moved away. Tanya confronted Rick, who was broken, and admitted it. 2 days later, when Penny opened the door to the house and dropped her suitcases on the floor, she had a strange feeling. It was the last feeling she ever felt. She thought that maybe she should call one of the guys to make her feel better. As she reached for the phone, she noticed Tanya sitting in the dark. I always thought we were friends, she said. Tanya, crying. We're friends, said a shocked Penny. You had it all, Penny. You had a good home, a good life, and a husband who idolized you. Why wasn't this enough? Asked Tanya. I never thought he would find out, Penny said. I love him so much, but I couldn't control myself. It's probably something in me, just like my father. I guess you just can't fight nature. Once this desire takes hold of you, it cannot be killed. Let me try to kill him, she said. Tanya, pointing the gun directly at Penny. Tanya called 911 and waited for the police. It was ruled a crime of passion. Rick vowed that he would wait for her and visit her every week. Judy and I did get married. Articles have been written about us. Although it happens much more often now, it is still big news when a woman over 40 carries a child to term. We had twins. It's sad and terrible when someone dies, and neither of us wanted that for her. Both Ed and later Penny were victims of their nature. It's sad, but somehow poetic, that Penny refused to learn from her father's example and thus doomed herself to die in the same way. Apparently, you really can't argue with nature. Subscribe to our channel so that your second chaff doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think about listening to the next one.